Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and we're working on Winter Tales, and we're gonna work on the inside of the album, and I'm just trying to make a decision right now which way, what orientation I want my interior covers to look like, and I think I like it this way. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these laid down. It looks like I've got them trimmed out. They just need some glue. So let's see. Okay, looks good. Now you can choose to put down a panel here if you want, but since we're going to cover it, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. The only thing that's going to be exposed are the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it the way it is. There will be a little bit of a divot here where it drops down. So if that bothers you, you might want to consider putting down a mat to cover the chipboard piece. Oops, my cap is kind of glued shut. There we go. I added glue to my bottle. I have a 16 ounce and I keep reloading my 4 ounce. So I cleaned, whenever I refill my bottle, I try to use that as an opportunity to go ahead and clean my glue cap. Sometimes when I do that, it leaves a little water in the tip, and that's just enough to make it want to dry, and I might have trouble opening it once or twice before it stops doing that. Because I'm always in a hurry to use my product again, the tip never completely dries before I start trying to use it again. So there you go. And if you haven't tried these glue tips, I mean, I love it. I found it at an expo once and started using it. And I used to use the other one with a pin, but I was constantly losing the pin. That drove me nuts. And so then I go get a pin out of my sewing stash, and invariably it wouldn't be completely stainless steel. It would rust or cause some other issue, but it looks like I forgot to ink the strips. But I'm really enjoying this, and if you haven't tried it yet, you should consider it. We do carry them in our shop, and the first one I had for about a year and a half, and then I had a problem with it. And I've had this one for a couple of years now, and I think my problem was I wasn't taking care of my tip. So when you change your glue out, that's a good time to maintenance your tip. And like I said, this one's going on 2 years, or maybe even over 2 years. So they really last if you take care of them. And all you have to do is unscrew all the pieces and let it soak in a glass of water, and then let it dry, reassemble it, and put it back on your glue bottle. So it doesn't take a whole lot of effort, but my challenge is waiting for it to dry. I'm always ready, you know, to start using it again. So like I said, take care of it and it'll last you a long time. And you know, you all know me. I make a pretty serious number of projects with lots and lots of papers. So, you know, I get a mini album out every couple of weeks. So I do a lot of scrapping. So it's getting a lot of miles. Okay. Hope everybody's doing good. It's been kind of a quiet day at the house, which is good for me in recording. I think this is a beautiful pattern. This is a beautiful collection in general. I'm really enjoying it. Oh, you know what? I just noticed I didn't get ink on the edges. So I'm gonna do that real quick. And that is my dog in the background. So I might have to take a break and go see what she's upset about. And then I'll be right back. And we'll continue working on this. Okay, we're continuing to work on the inside, and so I've got my pages here. I'm going to go through them real quick so that we can make sure they're in order. Then we're going to do the installation, and we're going to try not to put them in upside down. So this is page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and page 8. Okay, looks like they're all in order. So I'm going to keep them in order. I'm going to pull this back in, and I wrote that this is the front and this is the back. So try not to put my stuff in upside down or wrong side up. So I'm going to pull in page 1. We're going to slip it over the hinge and get this installed. Okay, easy. I'm going to get my pick tool, and I'm going to use my pick tool to reach in and pull out the tape. And this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, and I'll tell you why. Because of how thick the front page is with all the interactive components, when you go to lay it down this way, it's so bulky, it's really pulling the page off the hinge. So I'm actually going to try laying it down this way and see how that does, see if it's better. Yeah, it is. Okay. Now I'm looking for that even border around the edge of the paper, and it looks good. So I'm going to reach in and get my tape. I think I got all of it. I'm going to find out in a second. Did I get all of the tape? I think I did. Ooh, that's really tight. I might have to rethink that. That might be a little too tight. I think I put it actually too far down on the hinge, and see, it doesn't want to lay down now. So I'm going to have to actually back that off. And then what I'm trying to communicate is, I'll show you on this side. I put my page too far to the hinge, so I need to back off and come up a little bit. So I'm going to have to lift this off and start over, and hopefully I can do this, accomplish it without using undo, but we'll see in just a second. Let me use my spatula. Yeah, and it released. Okay. So, oh, and it looks like I have little tape backing here too. So I'm going to try that again, and I'm going to try to get that. There we go. That last little piece to release. Let's do that again, and I'm not going to push down on so far down on the hinge. So be careful when you're installing page 1. It's really thick this way, so that means that you need to install it on the top part of that hinge. And when I'm finished, I'm going to raise this up so I can give you guys a visual of what I'm talking about. So I do think I need to go and install it this way and let it travel up on the hinge as required. And now I'm looking to center it, and it needs to go a little bit more like that. Okay, I think that's good. Okay. So if you look here, this is my score line. That's my bookbinding tape that's wrapped all the way around. But here's my score line, and here's where the page is added. So it's actually a little bit a ways from the hinge toward the spine. Hopefully that makes some sense. So when you are installing page 1, page 8 will be the same way. As you want to lay it down on the bulky side, and then it's going to raise it up on the hinge, and then remove your tape. Ooh, I don't know where that came from, but I'm not happy with it. Looks like ink. Huh. Maybe it was on my spatula when I was trying to pull. I'm just using a kneaded eraser. And this is the bookbinding tape, so it's kind of a fabric, so I'm trying to lift off whatever that was. And then we'll get on with installing the rest. Okay, now page 2 is pretty straightforward, and it's not very heavy on either side, heavy or thick. Oops, we still got to take the tape off the other side. There we go. Okay, so page 2, pretty straightforward. It's going to be easy. It's not very heavy or thick. Okay. Sorry, I gotta go check on my dog again. We'll get the last 2 pages in just a moment. Sorry, I just noticed my air conditioner came on in the background, so I will make sure to try to dampen out that background noise. But since we're only 2 pages away from having these all installed, I just want to wrap this up so I can get this video in the can. And then the last thing we have to do is the cover. Now, some people I like to do the cover last. And the reason is I want to get all the wear and tear on the cover before I put the designer paper down. I think my paper tore, yeah. It's a little piece of tape in here, or the backing, I mean. And then also the pages in the book will help hold the book kind of in a square position. So that's the reason I like to do it that way. Okay, here's our last page. And again, this is going to be a bulky one, so you're going to want to lay it down on the bulk side so that it'll pull off the score line on the hinge as much as it needs to so that it'll lay flat. There we go. So I'm going to lay it down this way, square it up, and then remove my tape backing. And by the way, for this album, I'm doing something different. I don't usually do this, but I'm happy with how it's turning out. I'm actually using 1/4 inch tape on my hinge. I don't usually do that, but I'm finding that when I use the 3/8 that just a tiny bit of the tape is being exposed. And it'll catch dust and stuff like that. So I'm using a little bit smaller tape. Now the other thing I did in this album, which, look, there's that mark again. So it's picking up ink from somewhere, but I'm not sure where. The other thing I did in this one is I used 80-pound cardstock, which is making everything bulkier, including the hinge. So that might also be the reason why I'm pulling so far away from the hinge, further away than usual. So, because I've certainly done albums with this flap design and been able to use 5/8 inch score tape, but So those two things are different. I'm using 1/4 inch tape on the hidden hinge, and I used 80-pound cardstock. For some reason, and I mentioned this before, for some reason, 80 or 65-pound white feels so much thinner than 65-pound black. And I'm not just, I mean, it behaves differently. When I go to score it, it's easier for me to puncture a hole in it. It just feels a lot lighter. Okay, so there we go. That is, all of our pages are installed now. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no, I'm sorry, 4, 5, 6, 7, and page 8. Okay, when we get back together, we're going to work on covering the outside of the album, and I'm going to clean my desktop off just to make sure I'm not somehow pulling ink in from somewhere. Be back soon. Hey everyone, it's Daphne. We're going to get started on the cover now of this mini album, and I decided that I'm going to use an 8x8 to cover the front and back of the album. And as you know, the album is 8.5 by 8.5, so I need to make this stretch somehow. So here's what I am going to do. I am going to double matte this 8x8 image. So I'm going to start with the image, then I've matted it with gray, and then on the very back side, I've matted it with this navy blue, which will be very striking against the white once we get it installed. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of this off the cover, and then we can just apply this as a unit to the cover when we're ready to go. This is just some gray, and it's a very pale gray. It's almost a beige gray that I happen to have in my stash. I can't tell you what color it is. I got it. I've had it so long I don't even really know. One side is like linen and one side is smooth. And I think I'm going to put the linen side up. And then this is a navy blue linen textured cardstock, and it's very light cardstock. This is probably 65 pounds. This feels even lighter than 65 pounds. And it's just a way to stretch your 8x8 image to cover your 8.5 by 8.5 without having a very large white border, which I think would detract from the cover, because I think your attention would just be drawn to the edges and not to the image in the center. So this is one way to quiet your border down. I still like to have a border, but I don't want it to be the feature. Okay. And what I'm doing is what I normally do is there's a 16th inch border around this, and then there'll be a 16th inch border around the image. So when you add that together, two sides, you get a 1/4 inch. And then all in all, that helps you stretch it to that 8.5 by 8.5. So as you can see, that would be a pretty wide white border if we were just applying this directly to the cover. See what I mean? That's, your eye is very much drawn to the frame and not the content. When we do this, it'll help us stay focused on the image. Okay, this is from the 8x8 collection pack, and I'm using the front on the front, and then the flip side on the back of the album. And I chose this consciously because I look around before I do albums, and I try to make an effort to do a cover different than what's already out there. So of course my inclination was to use the fairy and or the reindeer, but there's already covers with that out there. So I chose one of the images that's not featured at the moment as part of the cover. So that's where this came from, but mix it up if you guys don't like this, right? I think you could easily add either one of the ones I just described, the fairy or the reindeer. But I do think this is very elegant. So it's not that I dislike it. I just, I think I would have been compelled to take one of the other images. And this is the other one that I was seriously considering. But, and I'm still not completely against the idea of maybe fussy cutting her and figuring out a way to work it into the cover. But this is the base. So everything's going to get built off that. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing for the back. I've trimmed these out. So all we really have to do is lay it down. Now you may notice that I am not inking the edges of this gray cardstock, and that's deliberate. It doesn't have a white core, so I don't feel it's necessary. If this was a gray sheet with a white core, I would ink the edge. Okay, now of course that's the same as the cover. My plan is to use this for the back, and I'm rethinking that right this minute, and let me tell you why. I may not have another option. Is if I want to layer these flowers, I would need to have the second sheet to fussy cut. Look how, isn't that interesting? Just that little border, how different it makes the whole thing look. So let me think about that a little bit. I'm going to set both aside, and while I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and do the spine, because that won't change. And as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to take a quick inventory of what scraps I have left that I might be able to use for the back instead of that same 8x8, so that I can layer the flowers. The other thing I can do is I can fussy cut from this 12x12 collection, but if you see them layered together, you can tell they're different colors, so I'm not sure they're going to look as good. So I'll have to fuss around with that for a little bit before I make a final decision. Okay. And then I chose this rather bold strip. Some days it just goes right down just the way you want it to. You don't have to move it around or anything. That was pretty easy. Okay, I'm going to cap my glue, and then I'm going to show you what's left. And then together we're going to make a decision, I think, I hope. Okay, I'll set that aside. So again, here's our cover. Here's our spine. And that was the plan for the back, which I like because it pulls this pattern back in. But if I want to layer this, I need to preserve that. So my other options are this, or I could even go with this very bold, but then it looks like it should be the cover. And then I'll show you, I got 3 other sheets that are large enough. I could do the rest of the back in this pattern. I've got this beige, or this. So those are my options. And then I would be able to use this to fussy cut and layer some of these poinsettias. I never know if I'm saying that right. I kind of like the way this alternates, this sort of beige, blue, beige. But I also like this as well. That's just it'll be a pretty continuous pattern all the way on the back. So let's go ahead and pull this in and layer it here and get more of a feel for what it's going to look like. What do you guys think? I just realized I didn't cut this down to have the same borders, but it's okay. I like it the way it is. Although I have plenty if I want to redo it. And what I mean is this border compared to this border, this is much thinner. Oh, Oh, I don't know, guys. I think I'm going to do this. And honestly, I love this pattern, so that's easy to do too. But I'm definitely not going to use the second image because I'm going to fussy cut it and layer this. I think it'll give a lot more interest to the cover. And because I have 2 of these sheets, I think I'm going to go ahead and trim them both down to 8 inches and then make a decision after that. So you guys are going to have to wait. Okay, I decided that this was going to bother me, the fact that the frame is different than the frame here. And you can see that there's a lot less gray showing here. So I went ahead and found another scrap, this gray, beige gray pattern, which I really love, and trimmed it out and got it ready. And now what I've decided is I'm going to, well, I haven't decided. Now our last decision is going to be whether to use this pattern to wrap around the back or if I want to use this on the back side. I mean, I'm liking that blue, and I really like this pattern here too. This is very beautiful and very elegant. If we went with this, then we would have the option to introduce either some chipboard or some of these cards to further embellish the back of this. But I'm really struggling here. So I think because this is so elegant, I think I will go with this pattern and just have it wrap around the back. And then do something to embellish the back too. Now you can't go crazy on the back, otherwise when you open your book and to leaf through it, it might buckle or sit, you know, kind of in a V. So whatever I put back there is going to be kind of light. And I'm still thinking about possibly running a ribbon around the back of it. And if I do, then I could easily hide it behind one of these framed out cut-aparts. And then I could also run it through my layering here in the front. So I haven't decided yet, but it's an option that we have. Okay, this is from the 12 by 12. So is this piece. So it's actually one piece that I've split to cover the spine in the back. Okay. Okay. All right, that looks good. And you saw that I was inking it, and that's because there's a white core on this pattern paper. I'm set this aside, get this down, and then we're pretty much ready to add this to the actual book itself. I actually wound up trimming out both of those pieces to 8 by 8 to, no, I didn't. One of them to 8 by 8 to make a decision on what I was going to put on the back of the book. But this has to be it because I'm out of that navy blue cardstock. And I don't want to introduce another cardstock color to the album. And you guys know me by now, I like symmetry. So I want to be able to pull the front pattern around to the back, especially on the cover. We'll close that real quick. We're going to pull the album in. Let's go ahead and attach our front image. Oh, I can tell you the color of this. This is Recollections, and it's called Cartolina, I think. That's the color. Yeah, and this is old. I could tell you, I can tell how old it is because it's distributed out of Irving, Texas, and I don't even think they distribute out of there anymore. But you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I think all the distribution actually started coming directly from China. It's definitely made in China, but no, it's not made in the USA. So that's how I know it's old. Nothing's made here anymore, or at least not the paper you can get at your craft stores. All the Joann's and Michael's and Hobby Lobbies, nothing's made in the US anymore. And you can tell the quality's different. It's cheaper, but you get what you pay for. So I don't feel bad about using cheap paper on cards because people really, unfortunately, don't save them. But albums, you really want them to last. So I would recommend spending the extra money so you get a better product that's more durable. And what I found with the less expensive papers, what happens is you get cracking or splitting of the paper over time. That's what happens. Or at least that's been my experience. Okay, lovely, lovely. Now we're going to flip it over. I was just double checking to make sure I was putting them on the front and back, but I remember I wrote on it, so I wouldn't make the mistake I made on the last album, which was very frustrating. Okay. Okay, now our last piece is going to be the spine. I've got a little excess glue here. Want to be careful. I should actually have a handy wipe out, because when the glue comes out and you try to rub it off on white, if you've got anything on your hands, it's going to transfer and it won't come up. So here's our last piece. And it's going to go right here. Okay. Okay, that is it. It's funny, I just noticed I didn't ink the edge of this, but it's not that obvious. So because it's pale, it's just the top I didn't ink. I did ink the side. Just the top. Okay, well, that happens. But because it is a pale pattern, it doesn't show up. If it was like a navy blue with a white edge, it would be very obvious. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take a break and get together my embellishments for the cover. And when we get back, we're going to go ahead and finish decorating the cover. Hey everyone, I went away and I cut out a couple of things, and I'm ready to go ahead and start decorating the cover. This is a piece of the, oops, I left my power cord in the screen. This is a piece of the chipboard, and right down here it says Winter Tales, but I'm going to cover it up with this Once Upon a Time, which is just a little bit bolder. And then this is one of the cut aparts, and I've put chipboard on the back. Somebody was asking me how I do that, and this happens to be a piece of chipboard that I had left after trimming out an album, but sometimes I'll use chipboard pieces that are left over from Graphic 45's chipboard sheet, and I'll just use the frame. So it just depends on whatever I have handy. I don't cut into a brand new sheet. I'll always use my scraps. So when I do an 8.5 by 8.5, I always wind up with some leftover off my 12 by 12 sheet. And so I just repurpose that. So that's where I get it from. Now, you can use foam. And when I first started doing albums, that's what I did. But then I found out I was always running out of foam, and I wanted to move forward, and I didn't have what I wanted. And I learned this technique from Ginger Rop, who I'm sure most of you know. And she told me, oh yeah, use your leftover. And I actually like this better. I don't like cutting it. That's my least favorite part. But I like that whatever I add to my album is very rigid. So when you use foam, sometimes it'll flex around, and I think that creates an opportunity for your element to get snagged and torn off your cover. So I actually prefer chipboard now. Having said all that, foam is an excellent solution when you're making a card because you can compress it and get it into your envelope and mail it as a flatter element in the United States Postal Service. But for the purpose of an album, which is never going to be flat, I like the chipboard. So that's that. Okay, so this is one of the cut aparts. I've chipboard backed it, and I'm going to put it here. I think it's so pretty. And I'm just trying to break this up a little bit and add a little dimension. And I'm just going to eyeball it, and I think I like that right there, where it's partially over these two strips in the pattern. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do, you know, I was thinking about fussy cutting and adding some layers here, and then when I looked at the second sheet, look how blue it is compared to this. So I feel like it's too different. This one's very, very blue, and this one almost has this sort of turquoise green quality to it. So I'm not crazy about that. So instead of doing that, which was my original plan, I'm going to pull in more of these chipboard poinsettias and layer them in and finish this up. I'm also going to add some ribbon, but I don't know where. But for now, I'm going to call it quits. And these are the main elements. And the rest you guys will have to see in the walkthrough. I'm anxious to get this out because the graphic collections have arrived and I need to get started on those albums. So I will show you what I have done on the side. I added 3 of the snowflakes, and then on the back I haven't attached it yet, but I'm going to attach this cut apart, which I've also framed with white cardstock here. So one of the things I do to get this perfect is a lot of times when you have nested dies, the next size up is a substantial border. So one of the ways I manage that is I'll cut my circle out, then I will use this die and I will trace it, and then I actually hand cut the white cardstock piece that's going to go behind it so that I get this nice tight white border. Otherwise I think it's too bold, and again it takes away from the image, so I like it like that. So that is just a technique for you.